You broke out into a painful sprint as the four-legged green creature ran after you with an aggressive hiss. It hadn't been your intention to be out at night. You were fully aware of the dangers in the dark. Hell, that's why you avoided mining like the plague. Survival was difficult in this world as it was. You dashed over a fallen log, almost falling. Your heart was screaming with adrenaline, instincts taking over. This was bad. You were running blindly into the darkness of a birch forest, the crunching of the leaves beneath your feet creating a disturbing crescendo of crushing. And then, the forest vanished for a field. To your right, you could see red eyes staring in your direction. Spiders. To your left, shambling silhouettes of zombies. The only way was forward. That was, until you came to a shrieking halt. A ravine stretched out before you, and you were just barely able to manage to not fall down. With panicked breaths, you turned around. The creeping green monster approached you. Its empty black sockets were focused right on you. And then, out of the corner of your eye, you saw someone. Out of the corner of your eye, you saw someone. A person. An alive human. They sprinted towards the creature. Your eyes returned to the creeper. It was so dead set on killing you, it didn't even seem to hear the person approach. Your heart pounded harshly against your ribs. And then, an iron blade shot out from the monster's chest. In disbelief, it looked at the weapon that had penetrated it. One last hiss, and then life left its body. In its place stood a man. He was muscular, wearing a blue shirt and dark purple pants. The man pulled out the He crossed his arms and grinned smugly. Come with me, if you want to live. You had followed the man roughly 30 minutes, through thickets and even a small stream, to the place he had simply called home. If you had known that he meant a wooden two-story house next to an idyllic lake, you would have been the one to make him go faster. Your eyes widened upon reaching the outskirts of the cozy building. It was surrounded by a small farm, with pumpkins, carrots, wheat, and even melons growing on it. Off by the lakeside even was a small pen, where 4 sheep were sleeping soundly on the ground, and next to it was a small barn. The light of lanterns that were set on the fence posts gave the property an almost angelic aura of safety. The man sat you down in his kitchen and introduced himself as Bakugou as he proceeded to cook a meal. Minutes later he turned around with 2 wooden bowls filled with a brown pinkish cream. He set one down before you and gave you a spoon. If I had known I'd get a visitor, I would have slaughtered a sheep and cooked some delicious mutton. Or I would have baked a cake. Bakugou sat down on the chair before you. A stray like you must be hungry, eh? Dig in. Mushroom stew. Quietly, the both of you began eating. It tasted like mushroom stew. There wasn't anything special about it. And when you reached half of your serving, that he spoke up. So, who are you? Stray. First, you told him your name. Nah, I guess I prefer Stray, he commented. I'm a traveler, a wanderer, nomad, whatever word fits the best. You continued. I travel from village to village, picking up odd jobs to afford a few nights in inns. Occasionally, a good Samaritan will just let me crash at their place, but that's it really. Bakugou laughed. Ha! So you're a leech on society, got it. You huffed and blushed at that. Honestly, you preferred Stray over that. Honestly, you preferred being called a stray over a leech. Nervously, you tapped your fingers on the table. And upon finishing the meal, Bakugou got on his feet. Wait, you said desperately. What? He almost barked. Can I stay with you? He tilted his head and chuckled. Huh. You don't even know who I am. Shrugging, you replied, well, then tell me. Bakugou sat down with an almost annoyed expression. I'm a miner, farmer, and craftsman, like any proper survival expert living alone in a world like this. I learned from the best of the best. He smirked. Even traveled to the nether. Your eyes widened in admiration. Really? His smirk widened, but then he laughed wholeheartedly. Of course not. Well, the nether part, I mean. Sure, I have discovered the odd portal, but never managed to get it to work. Besides, I doubt I'd survive it anyways. You're almost disappointed. But survival expert and miner is true regardless. I built this home myself, and raised those sheep out there too. While you may not be proud of it, your inner voice told you to throw yourself at him. For protection and comfort. Admittedly, it made you feel gross. But if anything was strong within you, it was your sense of survival. And the ability to drop your pride if it meant you could live more peaceful. You folded your hands on the table and with a loud thud hit your head on it. Please, can I stay? Please, I beg you. Tears began running down your eyes. This may be your only chance for true companionship, safety, and most importantly, a steady source of food. Bakugou sighed. Fine, prove it then. When I go mining for emeralds tomorrow, you take care of my pets and garden. If you do a well enough job, you can stay as my farmhand. I'll even let you sleep in my barn. For a moment, you looked at each other. Then he raised both hands defensively. Don't worry. There are no horses, just a bunch of chests, hay bales for storage. He paused and scratched over his shoulder. And Brian. You blinked. Chained up in a room. You blinked. That sounded crazy. Why do you keep a zombie? Bakugou shrugged. To tell you the truth, I let him run around villages at night. The villagers hear the commotion he causes, and the next day they build a couple more golems. And then I just wait for a group of skeletons to kill it. Free iron is free iron after all. You grinned. And I thought I was the shady character here. Bakugou laughed. Hey, just trying to survive like everyone else. He got up again, patted you on the shoulder, saying, See you tomorrow, Stray. Before leaving the kitchen. You, on the other hand, began exploring the lower half of the building. It didn't have that many rooms. Outside of the small kitchen and the stairs leading up to Bakugou's bedroom, there were two more. A small library with an enchanting table that ominously whispered words in a language you didn't understand, and the other seemed to be a small workshop with a thick red carpet. It contained 2 blast furnaces, 1 smoker, and a crafting bench, and a few large chests. Slowly, you went on your knees. The carpet was really soft. Despite that, it was still the floor, giving you just barely enough comfort to sleep through the rest of the night. You woke up when the first rays of sunlight penetrated through the windows, and slowly you got up. Your back hurt, but you knew worse. At a snail spinning and grunting from the exhaustion, your limbs still felt sore. Judging by the footsteps above, Bakugou was already awake. Shrugging, you opened the door to the outside and walked along the property's edge until you reached the fenced-in part of the lake. You hadn't taken a bath in weeks. It would feel good to get the dirt off of you. Quickly you undressed before diving into the freezing water. Your head spun from the sudden shift in temperature, but the need to be clean was stronger. Biting through the cold, you scrubbed over your dirty body, making sure to be as thorough as possible. Knowing you'd soon do gardening and animal work, however, made you quickly realize that by the evening you'd be doing this again. But you couldn't care less right now. This was strangely comforting. That was until you heard Bakugou's voice behind you. "Hey, Stray. Haven't moved on yet, huh?" You shrieked, hiding your shameful body behind your arms helplessly. Your blush was absolutely adorable, though, he thought. "Going off to mine. Remember, do a good job. I'll let you stay." He winked before turning to leave. You growled quietly into the water, producing a few bubbles. Then you left the cold lake, got dry, and proceeded to do what to do. It was tiresome work, but you were used to it. After all, this was the same work you had already done for various villagers. It was now just on a smaller scale, and you didn't have help. You plowed his fields before spreading his seeds from a chest marked with a sign that read "Green Stuff" from inside his barn. Brian the zombie, as already mentioned by Bakugou, was chained up in an empty corner of the large barn room. He was staring vaguely in your direction while salvia flowed out of his mouth. You had actually convinced yourself that the blonde had been lying about him. You tilted your head, looking at the green-skinned former human. His skin was well preserved, probably thanks to Bakugou. He wore torn blue pants, but was otherwise good. Save for a heavy-looking collar around his neck that was attached to a heavy chain. Not wanting to disturb the undead any further, you had grabbed what you needed as quickly as possible, and then went on with your work. When the sun was about to set, you watched Bakugou approach from the south, his silhouette slowly peeling from the tree's shadows. He was pulling a heavy-looking bag behind himself, and once he was next to you, he grinned. Bakugou was out of breath as he set his heavy load on the ground. "Before," he huffed, "we checked the loot for today. Let me see how you handled the farm, eh?" You smiled proudly and slapped your chest. "Yes, sir." During his evaluation, first he looked rather skeptical. But over time, and became more pleased. He didn't say anything until he returned to his loot. "Well, let's go in. I'm starving." He threw the bag into his workshop before following you into the kitchen. "Well, I'm pleased by your performance. And the fact you didn't just leave." You smiled happily. "Well, glad I could make you happy." Bakugou opened the barrel next to the kitchen counter as he began to cook. You were lying on the soft grass of Bakugou's property. The moon by now had risen. The night was pleasantly cool and beautiful. By now you were living and working on Bakugou's farm for a few weeks. He even crafted you a small bed that he had placed in the workshop. Bakugou lay next to you, occasionally nudging a shoulder to point at a shooting star. You heard a loud groan come from the fence next to you. A zombie was trying to lunge at the two of you, but the undead couldn't really deal with the fence and just stood there, hungrily ogling the two of you. Worried, you glanced at the monster occasionally, while Bakugou, on the other hand, wasn't worried at all. "You know, Stray, I've come to respect you." You smiled and blushed heavily. "When I first picked you up, I honestly thought you'd end up leaving with my diamonds. But you didn't. I'm thankful you didn't break my trust." He huffed. "I don't want to know what would have done that mentally to me if I'd woken up with no Stray and all my ore being gone." You rolled your head to look at him. Wait, was he confessing to you? "Bakugou?" You asked cautiously. He blinked. Don't think too much of it." He deflected, almost too obvious. "Bakugou," you said more soft. He looked at you. His crimson eyes almost glowed in the pale moonlight. Do you want to kiss me?" You stuttered. "Kiss me?" You stuttered. I would love to," he said after a tension-filled moment of silence. Awkwardly, the both of you huddled closer to one another. His strong arms wrapped around you as he gently pressed his lips onto yours. Bakugou was warm and soft, despite his muscles and leather clothing. You groaned into his touch as the kiss became more demanding, more passionate. A moment that was only interrupted by the undead creature groaning hungrily, and Bakugou separated from you. Immediately, you missed his touch. "Knock it off, will ya?" The man on the other hand scratched the back of his head. Wanna, continue this inside?" Quickly you pecked his forehead and grinned. "Last one at the door has to feed the sheep tomorrow," you said playfully, and quickly jumped on your feet.